Welcome to Prologues. My name is Mary, and when I get overwhelmed and start feeling behind, I find it helpful to zoom out and remind myself that I am still in the beginning of my story. I'm sharing all of my life's chapters: mental health, relationships, wellness, beauty, the chaos of being in my 20s, and all of life's unexpected turns. Prologues is the best way to start your week, so join me every Monday morning for a new entry into my digital journal. Hi, you guys. Welcome back to another episode of the Prologues podcast. My name is Mary, and I'm talking about wedding planning today. You know what? I should probably put on my wedding rings for this episode. I took it off this morning to touch up the fake tin on my hands. Forgot to put them back on. Okay, there we go. Because I feel like if you're watching the video, it's weird for me to talk about wedding planning without the wedding ring on. So I got engaged in fall of 2021, and my wedding was spring of 2023. So I had over a year to plan, along with my husband, Matthew, who you guys know from the podcast. And I feel like my experience wedding planning was hard. At the time, I also just didn't know very many people who were engaged at that time or who had already gotten married. Now, I feel like so many of my friends are married. They're planning weddings right now, which is so exciting. I love going to weddings. I'm so excited. There's more weddings in my future to go to. But at the time, I really didn't know anyone. And I experienced a lot of anxiety wedding planning, and I felt very ashamed of it. And I felt like I couldn't talk about it and couldn't verbalize it. I felt ashamed because I thought that if I talked about being anxious while wedding planning, or if I talked about all the parts of it that I didn't like, people would interpret that as me not wanting to get married or getting pressured into getting married, not wanting to be in my relationship, etc. And I didn't want anybody to think that, because that's not true. I was so excited to get married. I just wasn't excited about wedding planning. I tried to be, and in some eras of that time I was, but I also just had so much anxiety that I felt ashamed of. I wanted to sit down today to talk to you about things that I wish I knew while wedding planning. The wedding industry is absolutely massive. There's so much pressure to have a picture-perfect, Instagram-worthy wedding. I feel like you go on social media and people are posting their cost breakdowns or 10 unique things they did at their wedding or their insanely gorgeous wedding photos and wedding videos. And there just feels like there's so much pressure. My parents got married in a town hall. They had a minister officiate and they had a square dance afterwards. Like, it was a different time. Whereas now weddings just feel like they're getting bigger and bigger and bigger every year. And it's hard to maintain boundaries during wedding planning. There's a lot of pressure on brides because you don't want to be an overbearing bride, because people are constantly getting online to talk about bridezillas and how awful brides are and how it's such a burden to go to your friends' weddings. I remember there was this one period of time while I was wedding planning where, because I was looking at wedding TikToks, my For You page was just serving me endless like wedding suck content. And I was getting so many videos on my For You page of people just complaining about weddings, complaining about going to weddings, complaining about the burden that weddings are, or complaining about bridezillas. And I just really didn't want to be that. I just wanted to be, I wanted to be chill. I didn't want it to be a huge ask on any of my friends. I was worried that if I did the things that I wanted to do, people would get mad at me. There was just so much going on. And so I wanted to make this episode today to just talk about it, because I feel like we're not talking about it enough. We're not talking enough about how anxiety-inducing and confusing weddings are. The first thing I wanted to share about is just the fact that it's not uncommon to be anxious while wedding planning. It's not uncommon to struggle with it. I don't know why we act like it is. So many people act like being engaged, your fiance era, is the best, happiest, cutest, most romantic time of your life. And if it was that way for you, or if it is that way for you right now, I'm obsessed with that. Like, I love. I love seeing people happy together, and I love that. But I just don't think that's a realistic experience for a lot of fiancés who are currently planning a wedding with their partner. And I want to normalize that. The anxiety. I had anxiety from start to finish, you guys. First, I had anxiety because I didn't know where to start. We got engaged in November of 2021. And I don't think we started really wedding planning until February of 2022, because we just didn't know where to start. It felt so overwhelming. I knew from the beginning I wanted to get a wedding planner, and a pretty full service wedding planner, because I was so confused and I was just so anxious about it. And so that was the first thing we did. But we put that off for about 4 months because it just felt like this monumental task, starting to plan a wedding. It literally felt like a mountain to climb, and I had no idea where to begin. Personally, for me, I'm glad we had a bit of a longer engagement. I don't think a year and 5 months, something like that, almost a year and a half is a particularly long engagement, but it's not short. And I really liked that for me. In fact, I would have done it longer. Like I would have gotten married, I think at the same time of year. I really liked having a winter wedding, but I would have made it longer if I could, just so the entire process was really relaxed. Or I would have started earlier. I would have started wedding planning as soon as we got engaged, more like, because then it just, even having that extra couple of months, I really appreciated it. One thing I do want to say is that the elopement conversation is important and should be had. Matthew and I did get married at the courthouse before our actual wedding date. And it was very romantic and very private. And I would not go back and change that. I loved it. And I do feel like towards the end that helped ease some of the anxiety about the actual wedding day, because we knew we are already husband and wife. We've already made this commitment to each other. Now we just need to plan a day that we can really enjoy and have a great time with. I love eloping. If you don't want to have a wedding at all and you just want to elope, I 100% support that choice. If you want to do both, I support that choice. Every couple needs to decide what's best for them. And for us, we were like, we just want to get married. Like, it's going to take some time to plan this wedding, especially because we have family all over the world and people need a lot of advance notice to travel to that kind of thing. But we just want to be married. I would recommend eloping, especially for my anxious brides. I do feel like it takes some of the pressure off. So the first thing we did was get a wedding planner. The second thing we did was sit down and talk about what was important to us for the wedding day. The traditions we didn't care about, things we did really want to incorporate. Which brings me to the second thing that I wish I had accepted sooner during wedding planning. I wish I hadn't felt guilty or upset about. Not upset. I wish I hadn't felt conflicted about. And that's that you don't have to be traditional. You do not have to incorporate any traditions that you don't want to. Your wedding is your own. I have always known from a young age that I wanted to walk myself down the aisle. There are a lot of wedding traditions that simply are historically rooted in misogyny, are rooted in this idea of women being men's property. I didn't want to incorporate those. Now, to be fair, listen, I'm not judging anybody who does. I think whatever tradition you want to include is beautiful. I can't stress enough how much I support everybody's choice to do whatever they want. But I've known since I was a teenager that there were certain wedding traditions that I just didn't want to do because I didn't like the root of them, especially, as you guys know, given my background in toxic religion, given the emphasis placed on women being subservient to men, women's only role in life to get married and have children. Those ideas that I grew up with that were impressed upon me from birth, once I deconstructed, I just didn't want to have anything to do with them. So my choice was to not include a lot of those traditions. And luckily, my partner and my family were really supportive of those choices. So you don't have to be traditional. You can pick and choose. If you want your dad to walk you down the aisle, beautiful. If you want both parents or just your mom to walk you down the aisle, love. But I walked myself down the aisle, and that was something important to me. We also didn't do things like the garter toss. We did a first look, so we didn't wait until I was walking down the aisle for us to see each other that day. I didn't wear a veil because a veil is often used as a symbol of purity in a traditional sense. I know that most people today wearing veils are not thinking about it like that, and veils are gorgeous. I tried a couple on. I just couldn't get past certain things. So I didn't engage a lot of those traditions. And as you guys know, I kept my name, and that was also extremely important to me. There was a time where I considered hyphenating my name. Matt and I have spoken about it. If we have children one day, they will have both of our names. I wouldn't mind if our future children, if they even exist, wanted to identify more with their Gordon side if they're being raised in Scotland, since they would have a lot of family history through that side. But I would want them to have my name as well, because my history, my family is important as well. A common argument that I've seen and that I've gotten since I talked about not changing my name is this idea of, well, you're either keeping your dad's name or you're getting your husband's name. One way or another, it's a man's name. I just don't agree with that. Like, yes, my name does come from my father, but my mother's choice was to take my dad's name. My mom made her maiden name her middle name, and she took my dad's name as her last name. That was my mom's choice. That became my mom's name. And my parents together, based on a mutual choice, gave me my last name. And so I don't look at my last name as like, this is just representative of my dad or my dad's side of the family. This is the name that my mom chose, and they gave it to me together. No one tells boys that they have their father's last name. No one, I cannot imagine someone going up to one of my brothers and being like, you have your dad's last name. No, it's just their name. And it's just my name as well. And so I played around with the idea of changing my name. I like wrote out Mary Gordon a zillion times, Mary Gordon Skinner, Mary Skinner Gordon, all these things. It just didn't feel like me. I looked down at the name Mary Gordon and I was like, I don't know who that girl is. Like, it's a pretty name. It's a very Scottish sounding name because Mary's a very Scottish name. I just don't know who that is. That isn't me. It didn't feel authentic to me. So I didn't change my name. I've also built an entire business around my name and my identity. And I personally didn't want to give it up. That being said, I support a name change. There are so many reasons for people to change their names that have nothing to do with just this idea of taking your husband's last name. If you have a family of origin that you want to distance yourself from and you want to change your name, if the two of you want to change your name, double barrel. If you want to pick the cooler last name, if you're just not attached to your name, there's so many reasons to change it. I just didn't want to, and I haven't regretted that a single time. And besides, the amount of paperwork that comes with changing your name, because both of my sisters changed their name, and I saw firsthand the amount of paperwork that it took to get everything, your social security card, your passport, your driver's license, your medical records, everything. And I was like, even if I did want to just publicly go by my husband's last name, I don't even know if I would legally change it, because that hassle looks like a little bit more than I want to take on at the moment. So first point, it is more than okay and more than normal to have anxiety planning your wedding. It does not need to be the happiest, most perfect time in your life. It's kind of like when people romanticize high school and they're like, people peak in high school or high school is the best time of your life. Who has had that experience? I don't know anyone who's had that experience. And similar thing, being a fiance doesn't have to be the happiest, most romantic, most beautiful, stress-free, blissful, idyllic time of your life. I just don't know anyone who had that experience. Even my friends who really loved wedding planning and threw themselves into it wholeheartedly still wouldn't say that being engaged is better than being married. Like, being married is better. And second point, you don't have to be traditional if you don't want to. You can decide for yourself. And I really hope that any of you listening who maybe want to forego certain traditions have the full and unconditional support of your partner and your families. I really hope that for you. The third thing I want to talk about is parts of the wedding that I thought were worth it and parts that I didn't think were worth it. And by it, I mean the time and money and effort that it took to plan. Weddings are steeped in tradition, and there are certain things that guests expect, things that are just done. And I'm going to go through the list of things that I'm glad we did and could have been a miss. So the first thing that I think was really worth it was allocating a large part of the budget to the photographer. The wedding photos that we have are gorgeous. They are just absolutely gorgeous. And we spent more on the photographer than most other things. I think the photographer was either the second or the third largest piece of the budget. I don't regret that at all. When you have a photographer you love, you are going to look back on those photos so much. You're going to have those photos for the rest of your life. I think it's really worth taking the time to find a photographer whose portfolio you absolutely love, who you get along with, who understands the vision that you have for the wedding, you can collaborate with, and whose photos that you're just going to be obsessed with. I also am really glad that we chose to shoot our wedding on film, or hire a photographer to shoot our wedding on film. We do have digital photos, but our photographer and her two assistants shot on film for the entire wedding. And we do personally like the film photos more than the digital photos because you only have one chance. A film photo is something where you take it and you hope it turned out okay, but you don't know. And so when you get the photos back, it's just a surprise. Those are by far my favorite photos. And the film ones, especially of the reception, even though they're imperfect, some of them are really dark. Some of them have light leaks and light flares. They're not perfect photos, but they are absolutely timeless. They really capture the joy and the emotions and the fun that was had on the wedding day in a way that I feel like the posed, like couples portraits, family portraits, bridal party portraits, and just more posed photos don't. I'm glad we have the post photos. Like, I got a full family photo on my wedding day. So all of my siblings, their spouses, all of my nieces and nephews, and that just doesn't happen. Like, we are just not in the same place at the same time all together like that. I feel very lucky that all of my siblings traveled, some from very far away, to come to my wedding, and they brought their kids. I did allow kids at my wedding just because I knew the only kids who would be coming would be my nieces and nephews, and they're so closely related that I personally had no problem with kids being at the wedding day, and they had so much fun. Watching my nieces and nephews like party it up at the reception was so fun. There's this adorable video of one of my nieces and one of my nephews running and sliding on their knees on like the polished wood dance floor. And it's so funny. They were dancing the whole night. There's this really cute video of me and one of my nieces dancing together on the dance floor. She looks adorable. I'm having the best time. Like, I enjoyed having kids at my wedding just because they were so closely related to me and I knew they would be fine. But again, if you don't want kids, completely understand. I don't think I would have allowed other kids that I wasn't related to. None of my friends have kids at the moment. No, at the time, none of my friends had kids, so it didn't really come up. The only kids that would have even been invited would have been my nieces and nephews. But yeah, I got a full family photo on my wedding day. That photo I will treasure for the rest of my life because we just don't get them very often. So photos and the photographer, completely worth it in my opinion. I don't think you'll regret taking the time to really find a great photographer. We also did have video. I have a couple wedding videos. One of them was shot on Super 8, and I've never posted those videos because, as you guys know, I haven't posted like 99% of my wedding photos or anything like that. I think I maybe will one day, maybe for next year's anniversary. But I really cherish the video, and I've watched it so many times. Matthew's watched it so many times, and I'm glad that we have that because the day goes fast. The wedding day goes so fast, and I just think the art of documenting it is something you won't regret. Something that personally I could have passed over would actually be the desserts, like the cake. We didn't do a traditional wedding cake where you both cut it and like you feed each other and the whole thing. We just, honestly, the only reason we didn't do it is because it didn't fit in the ceremony. We had a lot of things we wanted to get through in the ceremony because we did have a traditional Scottish ceilidh, which is a traditional dance. And so we were planning out the schedule of events for our reception. We were like, there is just literally not time to do a cake cutting thing. Let's just do cupcakes. So we got cupcakes and they were delicious. But a lot of people just didn't eat them because they came out in the middle of the reception. And when I say our reception was dancing, like it was a absolute dance party because we started with the ceilidh, which got people's mood up. I was so happy because everyone wanted to participate in the ceilidh. And I was just so happy that my American side of the wedding was so eager to embrace that tradition and was so eager to try it. So we started with the ceilidh. The spirits were really high. We transitioned into like the DJ and the dancing later. And we just didn't get to it. We just didn't. I think a lot of people didn't even know there were cupcakes. There were a lot left over. We had them just because we didn't do a cake. And we were like, we should have dessert because that's what you do. You have dessert. And it just wasn't really worth it. Kind of random, but we totally could have not done that and it wouldn't have affected the wedding at all. Something else that I skipped was hair and makeup. I actually did have a couple hair and makeup trials. And through no fault of the hair and makeup artist, I just didn't really enjoy myself and I didn't feel like myself. To be fair, I have gotten my makeup done so many times, and it's rare that I feel like myself after getting my makeup done by somebody else. You guys know I went on that whole long makeup journey, learning how to do makeup that was more flattering for my features. The look of my face is something that I've not my face, my makeup is something that I feel like I've really perfected when it comes to making my features look the way I want them to look. And even though I was trying to describe that to the makeup artist, I was showing photos, like I didn't have inspiration photos. I was just showing photos of my makeup done the way that I liked. And I just had a hard time communicating it. And again, it wasn't the fault of the makeup artist at all. It just wasn't, I don't know, it just wasn't really fitting. Same thing with the hair. I just didn't want a big updo, a big glam thing. I didn't want my makeup to be glam. And I just felt, even though the makeup artist and the hairstylist were really talented and they were giving me what I was asking for, it just didn't feel like me. So instead, I didn't do hair and makeup. I spent a lot of time before the wedding along with my bridesmaids, like trying out makeup, perfecting it, testing long wear makeup products, testing waterproof products, trying out different hairstyles. And my bridal party and I just got ready by ourselves in the hotel suite that we were in, blasting music, drinking champagne. It was kind of nostalgic. It almost felt like when you're in college and you're getting ready with your girlfriends crammed into somebody's apartment and you're getting ready for a night out and you're just like playing the music. Everyone's sitting on the floor doing their makeup. It was this really cute, like girlhood moment. And we were alone together. And I feel like if we had a hair and makeup artist, it wouldn't have had that same like really intimate vibe. So I don't regret passing that up. I think if you are also someone who just really wants to look like you, it might be easier to accomplish that through experimenting with your own makeup than it will be with a makeup artist. My apologies for the change in scenery. I'm running away from the lawn care noises. This is a much more intimate setup because now I'm laying on the couch. Something I did think was worth it was the live band. The closest thing that I can equate a Kaylee to for my American girlies is like line dancing. There are set dances for certain songs that you learn and then you all dance them together. We really wanted to find an authentic Scottish Kaylee band. Hard to do in the DC East Coast area. We scoured the East Coast. The band was one of the hardest things to find. We looked for 8 months to find a band, but it was perfect. Having live music before the ceremony, as we walked down the aisle, during the ceremony, coming back up the aisle, during the cocktail hour, and then when else? I don't think it was during dinner. I think we had the DJ doing background music during the dinner. Also during the Kaylee was something that I really feel like made the wedding. I was not upset at all looking back that we chose to spend money on a live band and the DJ because again, the guest experience at your wedding is important and music really sets the tone. A good DJ is the difference between a dance party and a lame wedding. And then the live band for the Kaylee was critical. So that was completely worth it to us. So those were my initial 3. I also asked Instagram for topics that you guys wanted to talk about when it comes to wedding planning. And I have a couple written down. Actually, I have a lot written down, enough that I think I could make an entire second episode talking about this. But let's go through this list. By far the most asked question out of hundreds of responses was, how do you avoid opinions of family? How do you ignore other people's opinions and just do what you want? There's so much pressure that comes from families when it comes to what you do for your wedding, whether it is traditions, whether it's overbearing parents. And I know this is a cliche. I know everyone says this and most people don't actually mean it, but your wedding day is for you. The only thing that matters is what you and your partner want. And so you get to decide what to do, especially if the people having opinions are not financially contributing to the wedding at all. If they're not paying for it, they do not get to have an opinion. I understand the complication that comes up if you do have a parent who's contributing to the wedding and they have ideas. Ideas is like putting it nicely. If they are trying to dictate how the wedding goes and they are paying for part or all of it, that's complicated. But here's where the boundaries need to come in. And here's where you really have to remind yourself that the wedding is for you. And if it's causing you a lot of stress, don't forget, elopement is always an option. I think communication is really key during this time. Hopefully you can find compromises if you have a really overbearing family member. If not, boundaries. The wedding is not for them, and you can be incredibly grateful that they're contributing and still want to do it for yourself, and that doesn't make you a bad person. If they're not contributing to the wedding, their opinion does not matter. Every choice that we made while wedding planning, that we made to cater to someone else, that we made to be over the top accommodating to someone else, we ended up not loving and even regretting a little bit. Thankfully, there weren't many of those choices, but I'm not exaggerating when I say every choice we made to try to be super, super, super accommodating to someone who was just throwing opinions left and right, we ended up not loving. Didn't hate it, but it just didn't feel like us. And if I could go back and do it again, I would have stronger boundaries, for sure. At the end of the day, you have to remind yourself the only two people that are going to be in this marriage are you and your partner. You're going to be with each other, hopefully, for the rest of your lives. You're building your own family unit together. And the most important thing is that this is your day. This feels joyful to you. This feels like a celebration to you. I feel like we really need to have a therapist on the podcast to talk about how to effectively set boundaries. Let me know if you guys would be interested in that, and I can try to find somebody, because boundaries, especially with family, are incredibly difficult to enforce, to set down and to enforce. But if you're planning your wedding, boundaries are your best friend. Thoughts on assigned versus open seating and buffet versus plated dinner. So we did assigned seating and a plated dinner because every catering company that we got quotes from was quoting us higher for the buffet versus a plated dinner, which makes sense because if it's plated, they know exactly how many guests are there and they know how many dishes to make. Versus a buffet, you have to pay for more food just so you make sure you don't run out because it's kind of a free-for-all. So we did a plated dinner, even though it takes longer during the wedding reception because it was cheaper, honestly. And I don't regret that. It was really beautiful. The food was amazing. We had a bunch of different options because I have a ton of like vegan or gluten-free family members, and it was just easier to kind of curate a menu that worked for a lot of different dietary needs, and it cost less. So I liked that. And then we did assigned seating. It was really important for us to do assigned seating, which goes into another question I got, which is seating charts are the hardest part for me. What are your thoughts? The reason it was important for us to do assigned seating, and I think this is something a lot of people could relate to, is that we had people at our wedding who didn't get along with each other. And it was important for us to make sure everyone had a good experience and keep some people away from other people or just try to minimize the chance of interaction. And a seating chart was the way that we accomplished that. It does make the seating chart difficult, especially if you have like multiple people or multiple groups or duos of people who you just needed to minimize interaction between. So we did assigned seating, and I'm glad we did. I feel like we were really able to give some people a better experience just by giving them a little bit of space and separation from people who we knew they would have a better time if they weren't around. And to be clear, nobody asked us to do that. Nobody requested that. But we had a pretty small guest list. I think we invited maybe like 72 people, and then we had, I think, like 65 guests. So all people we were really, really close to, and we just knew they would be happier in a certain seating arrangement. So nobody asked, but it was something we just knew we should do. Did you have real or silk flowers? And if real, were they worth the money? So we had real flowers. They're expensive, but I don't regret that either. They were gorgeous. We didn't have any wedding decorations really, except for the flowers. The flower pieces were the center of everything at the wedding. Flowers and candles really defined the wedding decor. And I don't regret the flowers because at the end of the day, we donated a lot. And we also sent flowers home with people. All of my nieces got to go home with some of the bridal bouquets. We pressed a bunch of flowers. The actual floral arrangements we donated to a local fundraiser. And so they just used them at the fundraiser. If you ask your florist what to do with the flowers afterwards, sometimes they'll even take them back and give you a little money back if they can reuse them, or they might have suggestions on where to donate because that's our florist told us where to donate them afterwards. I don't regret the flowers. I thought they were gorgeous. It's expensive. Flowers aren't cheap, but it was so cute watching people go home. One of my friends took my bridal bouquet to a bar after the wedding, because a bunch of people went to bars. Matt and I went straight to our hotel, but some people went to bars. And one of my friends took the bridal bouquet. They returned it the next day, and then we pressed it, and it wasn't like beaten up or anything. They took good care of it. But there are photos that some of my friends have of the bouquet in this bar in DC, and I thought it was so funny. And then, like I said, all of my nieces took home a bridesmaid bouquet, and they were so happy and so excited about it. And I thought that was cute. I don't regret the real flowers. Something you're grateful you did day of and something you wish you'd done. So my favorite thing that we did the day of was carve out an hour after the first look and couples photos an hour between that and the wedding ceremony. And I thought it was the best. We had this room in our venue where the entire bridal party and some family were hanging out. I actually took off my dress for the whole hour and I put sweatpants and Uggs on. I had already been in the dress for a long time at that point. Gorgeous dress, but it was a little difficult to maneuver in because it had a train and it was quite heavy. And so we just built in this hour. I took off my dress. I chilled in sweatpants. The family and the whole bridal party were hanging out. We popped some bottles of champagne. People were just laughing. And it's actually one of my favorite memories from the whole day because it was just chill and it was a moment to be intimate with all of our favorite people. There are some hilarious photos that came out of that hour, and it was just nice for calming the nerves. And then 10 minutes before the ceremony was about to start, we all got dressed again. The men put their ties back on. I put the dress on. You touch up your makeup and your hair, and then you're good to go. I loved that. If you have the ability to just build in an hour or even 30 minutes to just hang out together before the ceremony, I don't think you'll regret it. Something I wish I had done day of, or something I wish I'd known day of, is that I did not want to be kept out of the loop, even with some minor inconveniences. So at the start of the day, the best man and my maid of honor were coordinating, and so there were like some minor things that came up, and they were trying to coordinate together to fix them so that I wouldn't know about it, which was very well intentioned because they were trying to keep me from having unnecessary stress. But once I figured out that was going on, I just felt stressed about not knowing all the details. So I ended up telling my maid of honor, like, I appreciate what you're trying to do, but I just want to know, like, even if it's an inconvenience, even if it's a little setback or something gone wrong, I would rather know about it than know that something is going on and I don't know the details. And I wish I had thought about that beforehand, because I'm an anxious person and I really need to know what's going on. And I should have known that I would want to be included in that just straight from the get-go. It wasn't a huge deal or anything. I realized pretty early on in the day that I just needed to be kept in the loop. So I made that request and then it was fine. If you're the type who just doesn't want to know anything, totally get that. How did you bring two cultures together? So I think you guys all know this by now, but my husband is Scottish. There are Scottish wedding traditions we really wanted to incorporate, especially because we were getting married in the United States, and he had family and friends coming, not only from Scotland, but all over the world. And it was really important to us to incorporate the Scottish traditions to make his family feel represented, to make his friends and his loved ones just feel like really included and really seen. So the ceilidh was the biggest thing that we did. Matthew also wore his kilt and his groomsmen wore tartan trews. We encouraged our Scottish guests to wear their kilts. We were like, if you want to wear them, you are absolutely welcome to. Some wore their kilts, some wore suits, just because kilts are really heavy and they also come with a lot of like accoutrement. There's not just the kilt, there's like the sporran, the socks, the shoes, the flashes, the jacket. There's a lot of other things. So some people elected not to travel with them because they're just very heavy and bulky, but some people did. And so we really encourage that. Like I said, the ceilidh was definitely the biggest thing and most people's favorite part of the wedding. We had almost the entire guest list, literally like 65 people, reach out to us after the fact and say the ceilidh was so much fun. They're so glad we did it. It was unique. None of my American family and friends had obviously ever done anything like that, except line dancing. A lot of us have line danced because like I'm from Virginia, but everyone just had the best time doing that. And then also for our plated dinner at the reception, we modeled the menu after a traditional Sunday roast. So we had like a roast, root vegetables, Yorkshire pudding, all those things. And then we also had some vegan options. And I really liked that. And we got a lot of great feedback on that from his side of the guest list. I think there's a lot of ways to bring two cultures together, whether it's through the music, the food choices, if there are specific parts of the ceremony that you can blend. And I do think it's really important to make both sides feel represented. The last topic I wanted to touch on was something that I really stressed about in the year leading up to my wedding, which was how to have a full social battery all day and all night. I was so anxious about this because there have been a couple times in my life where I've really looked forward to an event. I've been truly so excited for it. And then on the day of, my social battery is drained, my mental health is bad, and it's kind of ruined it. Like something I've really looked forward to. And then I wake up the day of, mental health is horrible. And then it just ruins this thing that I've looked forward to for so long. And I spoke about this a lot with my therapist, and we came to the conclusion that it's difficult to build something up in your head for such a long time because rarely do things live up to expectations like that. And so for me, in order to ensure that my social battery would be okay, that my mental health would be okay, I really tried to reduce expectations. I told myself, if everything goes wrong, it doesn't matter. The important thing about today is that it's a celebration of the love and commitment that my partner and I are making to each other. We are technically already married, and everything else doesn't matter because our marriage is going to be our marriage if the whole dinner is burned, if the band doesn't show up, if someone spills wine on my dress, like it doesn't matter. The only thing that matters is the marriage. The wedding is about the marriage. It's a celebration. And there, if you have that mindset going into it, there's a lot that can go wrong that isn't going to bother you because all you're thinking about is the marriage. That really helped me. I worked very hard to reduce expectations for the day of. I told myself for a year, if everything goes wrong, it doesn't matter. The only thing that matters is the marriage. And that helped me a lot because when I woke up the day of the wedding, I feel like I had already gotten all of my anxiety out and I was just in like celebration mode. When it comes to social battery specifically for my introverted girls out there, one thing that really helped us was having a private table at the wedding reception, like during the dinner. So we didn't do a bridal party table. Matt and I sat alone together and we told our wedding planner, don't let anybody come up to us. Because when you're at a wedding, your friends and family are there to celebrate you. People want to get photos with you. People want to wish you well. And there's time for that during the reception, but not during dinner. Our dinner was the one time during our wedding day where no, because we also did our first look and our vows together. It was the one time during the wedding ceremony and reception that we were alone together and uninterrupted for like 35 minutes, honestly. And it was fantastic. We just got to sit, enjoy the meal. And I think only one person slipped through the wedding planner's like perimeter and it was fine. It like wasn't a big deal or anything. But for the most part, we just established that this is our time to just reflect on what just happened, to talk about our feelings, to talk about the wedding and like, it was just, we were like giddy, you know? So for my introverted girls, I would really recommend that. Have a sweetheart table off by yourselves. Tell your family, tell the bridal party, tell the wedding planner. Nobody comes up to us. This is our time. I as an introverted girl myself, I think that did wonders. Like I said, I think this could be a multi-part episode. There's definitely way more that we could talk about. So if you would like a part 2 to this episode sometime in the future, let me know. If you don't have a lot of friends or family around you who have already gotten married that you feel like you can chat through this with, I completely understand. And I hope that this podcast episode sort of served in some way for you. I love talking about weddings, and I feel like a lot of brides, in an effort to not be a bridezilla, try to not talk about their wedding because they don't want to bore people, but you're not boring me. In fact, I've told all of my friends who are currently engaged, like, you're not boring me. You can talk to me for the next year about wedding planning details, and I love it. I'm not going to get sick of it. Like, I am excited about it. I feel like that's important to say as well. Like, if you have a friend who is getting married, let them talk about it. It's hard planning a wedding. It's stressful. There's a lot of pressure. And I think especially right now, because the rise of like people complaining about weddings on social media makes so many people terrified to be a bridezilla. They just feel like they cannot talk about it. But I love weddings, so I will talk about it. I really hope you guys enjoyed this episode. I had a fun time recording it. I've had a big smile on my face the whole time because this is just so fun. Let me know if you'd like a part 2. And I just wanted to say, wherever you are, wherever you're listening, I hope you're having the best week. Thanks for spending your Monday morning with me. And I'll talk to you guys very, very soon.